And we are back. Welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. I'm Menez. I'm joined by Paul Dennett. Paul, how are you? God, I've got the hiccups.
G'day, Menace. G'day, everyone. I'm good. It's going to be a fun show. If you've got a couple of hiccups, I'm sure you'll get over them.
Yeah, you'll have to scare me with some cricket stats or something. Um, yeah, we took an unscheduled break last week, but we're back. We've got almost a little two-part show here. We've got our Super Over, so we're going to start off with our top six talking points from the IPL's first week and a half. So we've got the Super Over to kick things off. Then there's a bit of Australian cricket news to wrap things up since we last recorded. Paul, should we get into it with the IPL? We're 14 games in. There's already a lot to talk about.
Absolutely, Menace. Now, if anybody out there is still unconvinced as to whether they want to give the IPL a chance, I don't know. For some listeners, that would be an amazing concept because in some parts of the world it's number one, but there are still pockets of fans in Australia and England and other parts of the world who have never experienced it. You could have done a lot worse than to tune in to the game that was on last night. One of the two games on last night, Gujarat Titans up against the Kolkata Knight Riders. This is the first ball of our Super Over. So we're going to have six snappy topics. And Menace, they got to the point where Kolkata, chasing Gujarat's total of 4 for 204, needed 39 from 9. Now, my whole life, the moment when you can hit every ball for 4 and not win has always been like a cutoff. I know you technically can still win, but at that point, I've never seen a side in all my life win from there. And it actually annoys me when the commentators give them a chance. Like, all they've got to do is hit 5 6s and 4 4s or whatever else. It's like, guys, the game is over. Stop trying to promote it. And that's what we got to last night, didn't we?
Absolutely. And I just want to echo your sentiments about, if you're sort of sitting on the fence about the IPL, you certainly should get into it because pretty soon you're going to have no choice. It's going to be running like 8-9 months of the year. There's going to be no other cricket to watch. It's just going to be all IPL franchises. So you better get on board or find a new sport.
I've always, at this point, whenever we get to this point, I always echo what our friend of the show, Patrick Avenel, says that in 10 years' time, the Ashes will consist of a 5-match T20 series between Chennai Super Kings and Mumbai Indians. So, yeah, look forward to that, everyone.
Dhoni will still be playing. All right, now, let's get into the first ball. So you mentioned it. So we had not just one of the games of not the game of the IPL so far. These hiccups are really driving me nuts. This is going to be like the hiccup episode of Cricket Unfiltered.
Let me scare you. I don't like DRS.
No, Jesus. Who is it over there?
Just for anyone watching that was a joke to try to scare him. I do like DRS.
Yes, please. You don't want that label. But we not just saw we're talking about a feat that's never been achieved before in any men's T20 cricket game. So Gujarat batted first, and they made it 204 for 4. Vijay Shankar made 63 off 24 balls at a strike rate of 262, and he scored 40. He helped Gujarat score 45 runs in the last 2 overs. So an incredible finish for Gujarat, 207. You're thinking, right, they're looking pretty good here. And then out come the Kolkata Knight Riders, and they get off to a pretty good start. Venkatesh Iyer makes 83 off 40. Rana made 45 off 29. And they're sticking with it. But then the Gujarat captain, Rashid Khan, just comes in and takes a hat trick. And he gets Andre Russell out. Then he gets Narayan. Then he gets Shardul Thakur. So a really good hat trick for Rashid Khan. And at that point, the Kolkata Knight Riders are 7 for 155 in the 17th over. And really, the game's looking gone for Kolkata. And then it got down to 39 off 9, as Paul said. And then in the last over, the first ball was a single to get Singh on strike. And then he hit 5 sixes in a row to win the game. Just incredible. So ESPN Crick Info have a almost like a win viz. And they had at the end of ball one of the last over, Calcutta just had a 1.29% chance. And then after ball two, a 0.61% chance. So at the beginning of the over, Calcutta had no chance. They hit 5 sixes in a row. Incredible. It's the highest number of runs ever scored in the last over of a T20 game to win. The previous high score was 23, scored by the Sixers against the Thunder. There you go, Paul. And the rising Pune Super Giants. So just incredible.
Yeah, and a couple of other incredible points that, as Menas said, Rashid Khan took a hat trick. The ball, 2 balls before he took a hat trick, there was another wicket. Alzari Joseph took a wicket. So they lost 4 for 1 off 5 balls. And we didn't even mention that in the intro. That's normally the highlight of any game of cricket. And I was talking about how they needed 39 off 9. I'm a bit of a fool because the next ball was a dot ball. So they actually needed 39 off 8. I don't know why I chose that point to draw the line. So they actually needed 39 from 8. So they basically had to score 5 a ball, and they did it. So, incredible. If you've got a chance, if you've got KO, don't watch the mini. Actually watch the game because you can fast forward to the end. The mini doesn't do it justice because it's sort of it happens too quickly. But if you actually watch the full game, those last couple of overs, and pretend that you don't know it, you'll have a great time.
So the bowler Yash Dale bowled the last over for the Gujarat Titans, who conceded the 5 sixes. And look, Rinku Singh played really well. But those first 3 or 4 deliveries were just pies. I mean, the first 3 sixes were full tosses, ready to be hit. Now, you've still got to hit them. So it's not a knock on the batter. Like I've seen lots of batters in that situation hit the ball straight down the fielder's throat and get out. So it was still astonishing batting, but it was not good bowling at all. Then the 4th 6, I think, was a half tracker, sort of wide enough. He still hit it straight over the bowler's head in a peculiar place. But I got to say, that was some pretty shocking bowling.
Yeah, it was. I didn't mention that. It is true, and short boundaries as well. But still, you can't really take anything away from Rinku and from the batting side. And one of the most exciting games of T20 cricket ever played, I would say.
Rashid Khan now has 4 T20 hat tricks, the most by any player. All right, so now to our second ball. And this is going to be fun for all you international fans out there because the Aussies are playing in the IPL and they're not exactly taking it by storm, Paul.
It's pretty embarrassing, actually. It's at the point where watching along, whenever the Aussies are kind of involved, I think, oh gosh, if I had my money on this match, I'd have it on the other side. Even to the point where the other night, Maxwell came out and smashed one. I think it was a 60 hit, and I actually wrote in my notes thinking, oh, maybe he hit a 4, but I sort of said, I don't have the same faith that I used to have in Maxwell. And sure enough, next ball he got clean bowled in a pretty ordinary shot. So yeah, the Aussies have been particularly disappointing so far. Just going through them with the bat. Tim David, I mean, to be fair, they haven't had much opportunity yet. We're only talking 2-3 games into the tournament, so plenty of things can change. Tim David got a few runs the other night. And he got a 31, as the rest of the Mumbai Indians didn't do much. But that's about the only real runs of note. Marcus Stoinis has scored 43 runs, but at a strike rate of 105. Cameron Green has batted twice without looking impressive. He's failed twice. Mitchell Marsh has failed twice. Glenn Maxwell has failed once. The other time he came out and cracked a couple of sixes, so I've still got plenty of hope for him. Matt Short made his debut for the Punjab Kings. Just got the solitary run.
He got a pretty good ball. He got a pretty good ball to get him out, actually.
It's exciting that he's going to be hopefully getting a bit more of an opportunity there. But the big talking point is also David Warner. That as far as runs are going, he's going well. He's scored 158 runs at an average of 53. And to be fair to him, he's been batting often in the middle of a collapse. The Delhi Capitals have not looked at all very good. But the concern is that David Warner's strike rate. He's only scoring at a strike rate of 117. In his last game when he got out and then they reprieved him because there was not the requisite number of fielders inside the circle. But before they realised that, I think the commentator said something like, it's put him out of his misery kind of thing. And he'd scored 60 odd at the time, went on to make 65. But the joke we're sort of talking about, he's looking morphing into Aaron Finch at the moment, Menace.
Well, he's got about the same strike rate, 117. So I think it's too early to tell with Warner. I echo those sentiments that in the games, it feels like there's been wickets falling around him all the time, and he's tried to play responsibly and hold the innings together. In the most recent Capitals game where they were chasing that big Royals score, I felt that Warner, every time he wanted to get going, a wicket or two would fall at the other end, and he kind of had to rein it back. So I've still got faith that Warner can do it. I mean, some phenomenal stats. I think he's scored almost 60 scores over 50 in the IPL. He went past 6,000 IPL runs, to just the third player to do that. So he's an absolute monster in the IPL. So I've still got a lot of faith, but he'll need to improve his strike rate. He just can't go along hitting it at 120, opening the batting in the IPL. That's not good enough. But I think he needs his teammates to give him a hand.
Definitely. And I mean, from an Australian point of view, at least he's getting runs. And we looking ahead to the World Test Championship final that's in England, and then potentially, if he's still in the side for the Ashes, and then for the World Cup that's in India later on in the year, it's at least, it's far better to be averaging 50 at a reasonably respectable rather than superb strike rate than not. Turning our attention to the bowling, Jason Behrendorff's copped some tap in the couple of games that he's played. Cameron Green, ditto. Mitch Marsh hasn't really bowled much. Glenn Maxwell's bowled just the one over. Marcus Stoinis hasn't bowled at all. The one positive light has been Nathan Ellis, and he's taken 5 wickets. His economy rate has been 8.5, but I think he looks really good, and I think it's a pleasing confirmation of what we've been feeling, that he's a bowler right at the top of his game. And I hope that the Australian selectors really do have him in their sights for the 50 over World Cup. I think when I said jokingly before that when the Australians are coming out to either bat or bowl, I'm a bit nervous and would have my money on the opposition. The opposite is the case with Ellis. I have a sense of comfort that he's going to do pretty well.
It's a good point you make about the Australian players and the fact that they are not dominating this IPL, and there's not a lot of them. So there's 10 teams in the IPL now, and I think there's only 13 or 14 Australians spread across the 10 teams. So that's not a lot. And I've actually noticed that there's a really international flavor to this tournament. That it used to be, every team wanted the Aussies or perhaps a few Poms or West Indians, but there's players from everywhere. There's an Irish bowler, Josh Little. There's Gurbaz from Afghanistan. There's Rajapaksa from Sri Lanka. There's a real sprinkling.
Shikanda Raza from Zimbabwe as well. You're right, there is. So that's our second ball. Moving on to our third ball. Menas, we're about 14 games in of a 90 game 90 game season. So is it a 90 game, or did I just make that up? I think that's right.
I think it's like 190. So
190. Yep. Sorry. Who are the star players in your mind so far?
Well, it's not so much the star players. I've just had a bit of a look at some of the performances so far to give listeners a bit of a flavour of the way this IPL started, and it is a little bit different to last IPLs because for the last few years, because of COVID, they've been played in limited venues, but we're actually getting back to that classic home and away tournament style where home ground advantage is a legitimate thing, where you do see a variation in conditions. And we've seen that so far. So already in just 14 games, there's been 6 team scores over 200. The highest score being CSK's 217. So an interesting, so high scoring already. Batting wise, Shikhar Dhawan, the Punjab Kings captain, after 3 innings has made the most runs, 225, and he has the highest score, 99 not out. So he actually has only been he's not out twice, so his average is 225 after 3 matches. So hell of a start for him. That innings though happened on Sunday night, the same night as Singh's 5 sixes in a row. Darwin made 99 not out of 143 batting first for the Punjab Kings. So that's a Bannerman-like domination of the scoring, Paul.
Yeah, I noticed that at the time. I was thinking, as I often do, about Charles Bannerman's record from all those years ago in 1877. Um, yeah, just to your point, it's a good one around. Actually, by the way, I think it's 70 group matches, not 90. But to your point around the fact that they are returning to the stadiums for the first time in a long time, it kind of crept up on me that because obviously with um, the COVID situation, some of the matches have been played in the UAE, some of the matches have been played in hubs. For many of these venues, it's about 4 years since they've actually been able to play in front of their home crowds. I was interested. You might have heard it as well, but I was listening to Barrett's Under Racing talking to Jared Waitley on SEN Radio in Australia, and Barrett was sort of making the point that the the length of time that the fans have had to go without supporting their teams, almost counterintuitively, he thinks has actually strengthened the affinity for the teams. That even though it's only been a competition around for 16 years, and so it doesn't have the parents and grandparents supporting the same teams and passing that on to their kids, that having to go without has really galvanized the bonds that fans have for their teams. And that if anything, well, not if anything, but definitely that the IPL this season so far is the biggest and best it's ever been in terms of the level of interest pouring through India.
I think that's. I mean, I think it's because everyone, appreciates what they lost now, and is just thrilled to be able to go back and not taking that freedom of going to the cricket for granted. So Darwin leading run scorer. Then you've got Gaikwad second, 189. Warner third, 158 runs, and Butler fourth, 152 runs. Butler's got the highest strike rate, 180.95. So they're the top four leading run scorers, but Darwin with 99 not out. Superb performance. This is what I'm going to be keeping track of throughout the IPL. Most sixes. So in just 3 matches, Gaikwad has hit 14 sixes. So if he goes on at this rate and plays all 14 games, he's going to score almost 100 sixes just himself. Kyle Mayers from the West Indies playing for the Lucknow Super Giants, 9 sixes. And of course, Rinku Singh, 9 sixes, 5 of those coming in that last over. No slouches either. Faf du Plessis, who's playing for RCB, who's getting on a bit. He's almost 40, still hits the ball a long way. Shikadam, we spoke about, 8 sixes. And at Shimron Hetmeyer, playing for the Royals, 8 sixes, averaging a tick under 100 and a strike rate a little bit under 180. So some destructive stuff already.
Yeah, there was that game where Kohli and Faf came out and just absolutely got the runs on their own bats. I don't know if there's any player that I can think of just off the top of my head. I haven't done the numbers, but who's more different at Test level than they are at T20 level. That Faf's absolutely explosive, but at Test level he was a very, very sort of good, but stodgy sort of player. The difference is enormous. But for me, I still think Butler is the best. If I had to pick one batter only for my side, if I was forming my own IPL side, Joss Butler is the number one. Ravi Bishnoi, the leg spinner who plays for Lucknow Super Giants, didn't have the greatest season sort of kicking off his career last year. He's kind of those who've bowled a fair bit, is leading the economy rates with 6.25. Ravi Ashwin and Mitch Santner up there as well. So as always, the spinners are doing really well. And for the quicks, Jason Holder, Trent Bolt, and Alzari Joseph has been bowling really well. I've had my doubts about Alzari Joseph at T20 level, but he's had a very good start to the tournament so far.
Yeah, on Faf du Plessis, I wonder if it's a little bit of the same thing that happened to Shane Watson, that once he was able to give up, playing Test cricket and also 50 over cricket and just concentrate on the shortest form of the game, that he's really been able to improve some of those skills. All right. Most wickets in the tournament so far: Mark Wood, 8 wickets. Yuzi Chahal, 8 wickets for the Royals. And sorry, Mark Wood's 8 wickets for the Lucknow Super Giants. He took the only 5-wicket haul, 5 for 14, bowled really quick. And Rashid Khan, 8 wickets as well for the Gujarat Titans.
I think he bowled the ball of the tournament. I think Wood. It was 148 clicks, and it was just unplayable. I've forgotten who was facing it, but it was a very exciting spell. He got 2 wickets and 2 balls at one point. It looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep an eye on this during the IPL, but a bit of interest heading into the Ashes. Woods playing in the IPL, also Archer. So interesting, sort of just keeping an eye on their fitness as the old enemy, look to throw them against the Aussies later on this year. And looking at economy rates, best economy rates. Now, it's really early for this one. But of the bowlers who've bowled a lot, you mentioned Bishnoi, Ravi Ashwin, 6.41, 12 overs, just going at just over a run a ball. Very good. Also, Mitch Santner going at just under 7 runs per over. And interesting, he's playing for the Chennai Super Kings, also Ravi Jadeja. So you've got two left-arm tweakers bowling very similar. And so far, their figures are very similar. So interesting if Santner can hold his spot in the team. With the tournament so far, probably one thing we have not mentioned so far is the big loss of Kane Williamson. I think he did a ligament to his knee very early in the tournament, and he's gone home, and he's going to miss the 50 over World Cup. So, Williamson's going to miss most of this year.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was going to miss the 50 over World Cup. So it was one of those ones that initially looked innocuous because it was a 6. He's one of those ones who's on the boundaries trying to stop the 6. And it didn't look so bad. But then clearly when he had to be helped from the field in some pain, that sucks. I'm disappointed for him significantly. Just on one other, before I forget it, the whole notion of, we'll probably come to this in our 6th ball of the Super Over, but that of Archer and Stokes and others warming up for the Ashes, there's a lot of old men in England right now very, very angry that they should be in cotton wool in England or bowling, loads of long, slow spells in county cricket, not bowling 4 overs or having a few slogs in India. That's the modern way there, that preparation is very different than it used to be.
So that's a look at things early on. Darwin at the top of the runs, some high scoring so far. Wood, the bowler to watch. I don't know what caps they're giving out this summer. I've got to check for the next show, and we'll update you on the cap situation for the next episode. All right, now to ball number 4, Paul.
Yes. Now, I am a bit embarrassed by this. The fact that we have in Australia tried to get an impact player or some sort of substitution in cricket going for a while. They had that back in the 50 over tournament back in the day when you could sub one player out, and they used to laugh because Glenn McGrath always knew that if the toss went the right way, he'd be subbed out, and so he knew either way he wasn't going to be batting, and so he'd turn up to the game with just a tiny little, almost like a handbag, because he didn't need to bring his bats and gloves. But more recently, it didn't really work in the Big Bash. The whatever they called it, the Superman,
the X Factor,
or whatever it's called, something like that. And India's just tried it once and got it right perfectly first time. Like, it's just like, I think that Australia was tiptoeing up to doing it, but still didn't want to cross a threshold. And the threshold's always been, you only have 11 players that can play, and anyone else who comes on can only field. Obviously, the concussion sub that has kind of changed that. But we were sort of saying, well, if a batter bats, then the next guy that comes on, if you just bring on a pure bowler, that's not right and everything. And India's just gone, actually, no, let's just do it that way. So what happens is you don't have to nominate your starting 11 until after the toss, so you know whether you're batting and bowling. You've got 4 subs that you can have on the bench, so you can kind of got the whole range of what you need to do. And what it means is that, you could take, I'll take the example of just this most, that amazing game that we're just talking about. So Suyash Sharma, who is an up-and-coming leg spinner, played and he bowled 1 for 35. He's a specialist leg spinner. He bowled for KKR. Then when KKR were batting, at the fall of the first wicket, Venkatesh Iyer was subbed in place of Suyash Sharma and came out and belted 83 off 40. So you got 4 quality specialist overs and then a specialist batter. And I think this is absolutely how it should be, that it's not going the full length of Americanization, specialization that you have in, like in the NFL, where you got a specialist player to do absolutely everything. And it kind of goes down a path I don't think cricket wants to go down. But I think what it does do is it means that rather than, as we sometimes see, sort of dodgy off spin off 3 steps being kind of shunted in to get the 5th bowler somehow out of the way, and it's removing that 5th bowler option that was part-timer one way or the other, you can now have a specialist there and yet still have a specialist batter. I just think it improves the whole thing for the spectators. And how is it that Australia couldn't have realised this? And I think we should definitely copy this for the next Big Bash.
Interesting. I like the rule too, and I think it works perfectly for the IPL because you've got very deep, talented squads, and as you say, you're not you're getting the best quality out there all the time. You're getting to see that extra batter or the extra quality overs that you spoke about. So I think it works really well for the IPL because of the deep benches. I don't know if it would translate as well to the Big Bash where there's not the quality usually sitting on the bench. So I don't think it'd have the same impact as it does in the IPL. But I like the fact that you can name the team after the toss, and there's no funny rules. Basically, once you sub someone out, they're gone, and the new person coming in can do everything. I really like that. Do you think it does sort of change the role of an all-rounder because it was really important, to have that bowler, that batter who could bowl those 4 overs? Do you think it nullifies that importance?
Good question. I don't think so. I think there's still scope for all rounders. It might reduce it slightly, but you could still have a situation as well. It's one of these ones that sometimes my head struggles to get to think it through. But if you had a situation where suddenly you were 5 for 30 and you've got, we've got to make the sub straight away and bring in another batter to help things out, and we'll let the second innings look after itself. Those sorts of things. If the other batter that you're going to bring in is someone who can bowl a bit as well, that's going to be definitely to your advantage. I just think it just takes out a few too many Darren Lehman sort of style bowlers bowling filthy off spin. I don't know why I picked on Darren Lehman there.
Oh, Darren.
Yeah,
Drive-by shooting on it.
but I think that I think it can still work in Australia. I agree that the depth isn't there, but you would put players on the bench that you haven't done so heretofore. I mean, someone like Khawaja, who's not going to bowl, you could have him sitting on the bench with every intention that, okay, we're bowling first. You sit on the bench. Then as soon as the innings is over, you sub him on for the worst of the bowlers, the worst specialist bowler. So you're still getting a specialist batter replacing a specialist bowler and both getting to do what they specialize in.
All right. So big fans, both Paul and I, of the impact player. Ball number 4. All right. Ball number 5. Now we're going to be doing power rankings throughout the IPL. So looking at not necessarily which team is on top of the ladder, but which is the hottest team for the week. Now, as this is our first show, we get a sort of, we get a slow start because we're just 3 games into the tournament or 3 rounds in. But I'll go through the ladder, then I'm going to pick my hottest team. And I just want to say that, and I don't want to knock the Big Bash, but the ladder really bloody means something in this tournament. There's 10 teams, only 4 make the finals. It's cutthroat. There's billions of dollars at stake. This is the big time. So, there's no gimmies in this ladder. It's not like most of the teams get a chance in the finals. If you're finishing in the top 4 of a 10-team comp, you've played really well. There's no sort of sneaking into the finals. So at the moment, there's 6 teams on 4 points. The Royals are on top with the net run rate of 2. Then you've got the Kolkata Knight Riders in second spot on 4 points. Then Lucknow on 4 points, Gujarat on 4 points, Chennai on 4 points, and Punjab on 4 points. So they've all got 2 wins and they've all got 1 loss. No team is undefeated. And then you've got on 2 points Royal Challengers Bangalore, who actually won a game. Sunrisers have won 1 of 3, so they're on 2 points. And then down the bottom, Mumbai, none from 2. The powerhouses of the tournament, a very slow start. Tim David hasn't done anything for them, so Paul will be disappointed. And Delhi Capitals, 3 games, 3 losses. So that's Ricky Ponting's team. So that's the ladder. Very early days. But I still think if you're Delhi, none from 3, you'd be nervous if you're Ricky Ponting for sure. And I'm going to pick my hottest team. It's a really easy one. Kolkata Knight Riders. They, to win that game when they were, basically on the canvas for Rinku Singh to pull out that performance. And, what it meant was the Gujarat Titans didn't become the only team on 6 points in the end. So I'm putting Kolkata Knight Riders as my hottest team of the week. They're my power ranking number 1 team. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I would have them up there, but I also I really quite like the Rajasthan Royals as well.
Same.
We've kind of picked the two teams at the top of the ladder, but I actually did this without knowing the
Gutsy
ladder.
picks.
I actually did this without knowing the ladder because I hadn't looked at the ladder. I just thought which of the teams that I think are the sort of the ones that I'm really impressed.
Can I just backtrack a bit? Do you agree with me though? Like, as opposed to Big Bash lads, as opposed to a lot of other T20 comps, this ladder it's like it's a knife fight. It's 4 teams out of 10, 14 rounds. I mean, it's a proper comp.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you've got 10 going into 4, it's a lot more difficult than we've had with the Big Bash, where it's got to the point where it's 8 going into 5, where that's so. But yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. Anyway,
no,
continue.
What would be great is if they could go to the next level and actually have a relegation thing. That would be pretty courageous if they had a team that sat out and then they said, right, next year if you come 10th, you sit out and we bring the other team in.
Yeah.
That'd even
you have to play in the Big Bash. Suck on it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I like Rajasthan Royals with Butler. I like their bowling lineup. That I like Ashwin in there. I like Bolt, Chahal. There's no one in there as well that I look at and think, oh, he's a player that could get taken down. I sort of look at them as pretty solid. And I think Gujarat as well. That Rashid Khan, Alzari Joseph, Mohammad Shami.
India.
Absolutely, yeah. And then they've got some other decent batters as well. So Gill and Saha, Miller. And even though that Williamson is gone, he probably wasn't going to be an absolute dominant player for them. So it was interesting because I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago where they were talking about how, they won it last year, but they won lots and lots of close games, and the law of averages will eventually catch them up. Well, it hasn't so far. They've started pretty well. So, I think that they're near the top. And just, you mentioned Delhi Capitals. I'm a little bit concerned about them, and I'm also concerned about Sunrisers Hyderabad. I think that they're the two sides that worry me a little bit at the moment. If I was a fan of those two sides, but we need to put massive disclaimers in, of course, that this is the first week. These things will definitely change. So please don't go out and put money on these sides at our suggestion.
So who's your hottest team of the week?
My hottest team of the week is the Rajasthan Royals.
Okay. We've gone for 1 and 2. Love it. All right. Now, so the final ball, the over. What have you got for us, Paul?
Okay. So, Menners and I like the IPL, and we like Big Bash cricket. We like T20 cricket. And I want to have this idea that for the future of cricket, we can have the best of both worlds. There's just a couple of articles that I read in the papers in the last few days from English journalists, and they're both kind of not negative about the future, certainly positive about the future of the IPL, but a little bit negative about the future of Test cricket and sort of comparing that to the IPL. So the first one it was from Jonathan Liu from The Guardian, concluded with, I think this is a pretty cool line where he sort of said that the IPL is indifferent to your opinion of it. Your presence at the spectacle is not required, but you'll be present nonetheless because Joss Butler is teeing off at a strike rate of 240, and you will definitely want to watch that. In this country, he means England, you still frequently hear debates about how the IPL can be somehow constrained or accommodated, how the global game of cricket can weatherproof itself against its effects. To which the only response is, just look at it. These are the debates that should have been probably happening 14 years ago. And then he's concluded, turn on the IPL now, and you can see Visit Saudi and Qatar Airways hoardings plastered across a stadium named after Narendra Modi, while Dhoni thumps a pull shot into the screaming void. This, if you think about it, is probably what winning looks like. And the other one from Barney Ronay made the point about this, the Ashes coming up and the excitement of it sort of Test cricket, but then added, but it is also the beginning of the end. It is tempting to glaze over a little when anyone starts to talk about the end of Test cricket. This is a sport that thrives on dying, that seems to have been dying with a robust sense of theatre since the day it was born. But this thing is actually happening now. That ice shelf really is shearing off right in front of us. welcome to the last great summer of tests. And he prefaced that with some comments around about the fact that players like Stokes were playing in the IPL, and that the Ashes would eventually become something like golf's Ryder Cup, where it's sort of squeezed into a little few weeks and away we go. And it is being squeezed in. It's 5 tests in 6 weeks. I don't agree with them. Maybe I'm naive, but I have the feeling that, especially seeing the huge interest in India of the India-Australia Test series that's just gone, that we can have the best of both worlds, and that we can have it such that, the IPL is going to dominate for, and it's going to be an ever-lengthening time. And when I said 90 matches before, that was because I was thinking, it's 10 teams. They should be playing 90 matches. They haven't got to that level yet, but they will soon. And so that'll extend it to an even longer period of time. But I still think that maybe along the lines of a soccer window where there'll be international time, and we have to have condensed test series and really squeeze them in a little bit, but that's okay. I still think we can get the best of both worlds. That the IPL and other tournaments can be great fun to watch, but we'll still have test cricket to enjoy for years to come. I don't think it's dying. What do you think?
Well, interesting points you bring up. I think the future is here. I think if you look at the Future Tours program, and we saw the difference in the schedules between some of the richest nations who have quite a bit of Test cricket, and then some nations playing a lot less Test cricket. And I think if you look at the calendar now, it is dominated by T20 competitions, and this trend of the IPL franchises buying up teams in other competitions around the world does lend itself to employing players year round, and you're starting to see players from smaller countries, but not limited to smaller countries, retiring from red ball cricket, not accepting contracts, so they're available to be employed from franchises. So the writers are right that the cricket is changing in front of us, and it's changing very fast, and it's going to be very different to what we grew up with. But I tend to agree with you that overall, there are more opportunities for cricketers. So more young people, when they're looking at taking up professional sport, will see cricket as a valid alternative. Like, if you're not good enough to play in the test team, oh, well, bad luck, you don't have a career. No, there's a lot of other ways. So, and also it's like you said, that we will have those windows where the tests, those sort of marquee test series are played. But I guess I see where the writers are coming from, but overall, I think there's more money coming into the game. More and more people are playing it. There's more opportunities. There's more competitions. Every day I turn on, there's more and more cricket to watch. But Test cricket, as we know it, certainly is changing. And, we saw a one-off test match between Bangladesh and Ireland last week. It was fantastic. But, who knows when Ireland will next play a test match.
Yes, I agree. And I think that what maybe some people need to think about is, what would the world look like without T20 cricket and without the IPL, the cricketing world? Because the rest of the sporting world has moved ahead very, very quickly. And I don't think if we had no T20 and no IPL and no franchise cricket, I don't think cricket would be thriving. I don't think we'd be, we're looking forward to the next 5 test series and test cricket is still dominating. I think that the world was moving on, and cricket would have become a smaller and smaller sport without it. And so when you see the stats that the IPL now on a per game basis is the second most lucrative television rights sport in the world, I think that's wonderful. I feel pride for cricket. And as I said, I think in its absence, cricket would be in a much worse situation. It's going to be different in the future, but I'm not as scared by it as maybe some people are.
Yes, and I just echo what I said during the India-Australia Test series. I actually just want to get to India now and soak up this passion and this love for the game.
Yes. We've got to be
all
there.
Right, absolutely. All right, so that's it. That's our first IPL Super Over Show, done and dusted. 6 balls every week. We're going to be doing it around Monday night, fallback Tuesday night.
Quickly acknowledge a couple of comments. I might quickly acknowledge them. Sorry to jump in.
No, go for it.
So just Naman Garg said, will David want to play his last test match in the World Test Championship final? Every possibility. Sorry, guys, Nathan Ellis looks like a running spinner. He does a bit, but he's still very good. And he made the same point as you. That he doesn't like the impact player because it removes the all-rounder option. Gershan Singh Sanger. Pujara is the only non-contracted batter who has his place set in the Indian World Test Championship final 11. Good point. And then lastly, from Robin Summon, Do you think the Indian players should forfeit the last 3 or 4 games of the IPL and head to England to prepare for the World Test Championship? Absolutely, they should. And the chances of that happening is zero. And they probably shouldn't, actually. They should, they should stick with their franchises and do their best when they get to England.
All right, so that is it for the Super Over Show. So if you're listening on the podcast, Paul and I are about to record an update with some cricket news, so download and listen to that one. For those watching on YouTube, we're going to get straight into a little bit of a taste of Cricket Unfiltered. All right, welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. I am Menas. I'm joined by Paul Dennett. We've just recorded our first Super Over Show. Paul, I'm happy with the way it went.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun talking about the IPL in some detail. It's cool.
Yes, I was surprised. So we're going to catch up on a bit of cricket news domestically. Quite a bit happening in the last week, but there's actually been a bit of cricket going on. Usually, when the IPL's on, it's a bit of just that, nothing else. But Bangladesh and Ireland played that Test match. So I guess Josh Little, the Ireland bowler, who's the first ever Irish player in the IPL, must have missed that Test match for an opportunity in the IPL. And there's also the Fairbreak International Women's Tournament that has about 28 players from 28 different countries playing in the T20 tournament. So quite a bit going on. Have you been watching much?
I've been watching a lot of the IPL, and I actually, that Bangladesh Ireland game passed me by, which annoys me because it's the sort of game I would be interested in watching. I don't know why they're scheduling it at the same time as the IPL. I think that's got to stop. And I thought it had stopped.
It's all right. It was free on YouTube. I was watching.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't good, but I'm just saying Josh Little shouldn't have to make that choice. He should be free to be doing both. So they've got to just accept it. They've got to say, right, no, when the IPL is on, there's nothing else on, and it's ridiculous to be scheduling matches that are on at the same time as it. I think.
Yeah, well, Bangladesh won that Test match. Ireland put up a good fight. They're a good team. Lorcan Murphy, I think was his name, scored the second Test century for Ireland, and it was actually quite interesting. I started off the summer commentating a lot on those Irish players at Coogee Oval, not far from where I live, and there they were all wearing the baggy greens, playing in a Test match. But on the domestic front, Paul, I mean, we'll start, I guess, with the men's news. But the first thing was they negotiated new contracts. So the memorandum of understanding, which basically just decides how the money is divided up between the players and Cricket Australia. They went through that. Now, in 2017, listeners to this podcast will remember it got very heated and it got very ugly. And there was a time where the players were off contract. Well, you have to say, Paul, that aside from just the numbers, Todd Greenberg, head of the ACA, and Nick Hockley, Cricket Australia, did a good job keeping it out of the papers and getting it done.
Absolutely, yeah. The fact that it's slipped in under the radar as compared to, I mean, it was at the point last time where there was even talk of the Ashes, the 2017-18 Ashes being under jeopardy. That's how bad things have got to. So it's wonderful. Sometimes you want things to be a bit boring, and this is a good one to be a little bit on the boring side.
Yeah, so I guess the big differences and some of the really the great things about this new deal, the increase to women's pay. So women's players will now share in $133 million. That's increased from $80 million. And the minimum and average CA women's contracts will increase by 25%. Now this is something you and I have been talking about. The WBBL's got to be careful not to fall behind. Well, they've doubled the salary cap to almost $750,000 every year. So I think that's a really good sign for the WBBL.
Definitely, and yeah, they should fight the WPL the whole way, and it's in both leagues' best interest for that. So it's very heartening to see that they are not taking a backward step.
And an average women's player now, if they play in the WNCL and the WBBL, can earn around $150,000 a year. But if you're just playing in the WNCL, you can earn a really good wage of almost $100,000 a year. So it's the highest paid women's team sport in Australia now. So it's a phenomenal achievement by Cricket Australia.
Yeah, and obviously the players at the upper end who are playing just more than that when you factor in what they could get outside of Australia as well in the WPL and in the 100. There will certainly be players who are going to start to be earning well in excess of $1 million, which is
Absolutely.
fantastic. And we keep on saying it, but from where it was 10 years ago, the change is amazing and thoroughly welcome. And it shows what you get when you invest in, when you invest in women's sport.
Yeah, you're right. The top players, Australian women's players, can earn in seven figures, and then in the men's side of the BBL, the salary cap has increased from 2 million to 3 million. I think it was just under 2 million. It's now gone to 3 million. So that's quite a significant increase to try and keep pace with global wages, and also the the average wage is almost doubled for a BBL player now. So they're really conscious that a lot of the leagues around the world are posing a significant threat. So that's really good. That $2 to $3 million will certainly help bridge the gap.
Yeah, and I mean, not only does the Big Bash need to take into account all those other leagues that we've talked about at length, the Bangladesh League, the New South African League, there's the Dubai T10 and whatever else. Long gone is the it wasn't that long ago when it was comfortably the number 2 league in the world, but it's also still got to fight the fact that for a long time the heart of the summer for most Australian fans wasn't the test matches. It was the 50 over stuff and the World Series Cup and all of those matches that have now been totally marginalized, and the Big Bash needs to step up and take their place, because otherwise you're just going to lose a percentage of fans to the game forever. So it is good that they are increasing the revenues. I'd like to see them increase it more, but that's not bad.
And also, in a move, I think, to make sure players don't go overseas, they're increasing the number of men's contracted players to between 20 and 24 every year, because of the three formats. It was 17 to 20, but it's now increased quite a bit. So I sort of, if you look at the totality of this MOU, the good things are the increased emphasis on the Big Bash, the increased money into women's cricket. I just wonder what the negatives are. And, I've heard whispers there's a little bit less money going to the state associations now. And I think you'd imagine the money has to come from somewhere. But all in all, there doesn't seem to be any real gripes with this MOU, which is a fantastic result.
Yeah. Now, does this things like grassroots funding, that's separate to all this, isn't it? Or is that wrapped up in this
Yeah,
as well?
no, it's wrapped up in this. That's the issue. So, Cricket New South Wales have a stated goal at the moment to double the number of 5-year-old to 12-year-olds playing cricket. I think it is over the next few years. They want to double the participation rate, and they're investing significant money in that. And I think the challenge for state associations around the country now is their budgets were tightened a bit during COVID. I don't think they've gone back to the pre-COVID levels, and so they have to work out where to allocate the funds. And I mean, that's obviously like any other business or any other association, but I guess that would be the money for the Big Bash, you would think, has probably come from that sort of pool.
Yeah, and I've had a little bit of first-hand experience of the grassroots in recent times with my daughter getting into cricket. Totally not. I mean, not that I've been trying to get. I suppose she's just seen that I watch 700 hours a week and talk about nothing else. So eventually, it was bound to happen. But I didn't set out to make that happen. But
Do you
during the
keep her
last,
stats?
say that again. Sorry.
Do you keep her stats?
I just on a blackboard. No. But she took part in a Cricket New South Wales thing where they had a really good coach come out to her school, and for 4 or 5 weeks with a group of girls, whoever was interested, to do cricket skills for those 4 or 5 weeks. And it was a really good program. And there's all these girls playing it, loving it. And my daughter's ability to catch and everything just went skyrocketing in the space of a few weeks. She went from not being able to catch to being able to catch. And it was really good. And you look at that and think that's the key to the whole future, because it's a very competitive marketplace, and that it's a game with high barriers to entry in some ways. And every time I pass the cricket grounds and I see people doing personal training in the cricket nets, and I'd be the one in trouble if I kicked them out, kind of thing. I worry for the future sometimes. So it's really good to see money well spent and a program that really works. So hopefully there's plenty more. We want money for everything, but hopefully there's plenty more for the grassroots.
Well, I mean, this is a good segue. Cricket New South Wales. I went to the recent awards night, and it was a bit of a solemn affair. After it was only the second time they've gone through a whole first class season without winning a match. It was a bit like a wake or something. But the men's contracted player list was announced, and a third of those players are from New South Wales, which shows that their grassroots is still the major feeder to Australian cricket. So after the MOU, they agreed on the money, and then they worked out which players got a contract. So Matt Wade came off contract. Matt Renshaw didn't get a contract. Pete Hanscom didn't get a contract, and Matt Kuhneman didn't get contracts. They were players that were contracted throughout the year. Are you surprised at any of those not getting a contract?
No, because when you've got the limited numbers, then they get squeezed out. I mean, Wade obviously is probably just about finished at the international level, if not completely finished, although I think he probably would still have a bit to offer, but it makes sense that he goes. Kuhneman, in an ideal world, I'd have said they should have just said, listen, we've talked about it before, but you're going to go and live in India and play in the Ranji Trophy for the next 3 years and ready for the next time we tour there. But yeah, no, given that they don't have a larger pool of contracted players, and then it makes sense that those players have missed out. It is a bit unlucky for those guys. And I was hearing again, Jared Waitley talking to Pete Lawler from the Australian about how this is potentially a pointer to who's going to be in the ascendancy for a position in the first test or in the World Test Championship final, especially if at some point in the series Warner isn't involved.
Yeah, absolutely. The other player to miss out was Mitchell Swepson. Not a big surprise considering he was overlooked for the Ashes. All right, so then the new contracted players. Well, Lance Morris got a contract. Michael Neser got a contract, which is interesting because I think, he's bowled very well in English conditions in the past. So I think you can expect him to go on the Ashes tour. I think he was on the 2019 tour. So,
Yep.
Joe Richardson got a contract. And although he hasn't played a lot for Australia, when fit, he is clearly of international quality. So I'm glad they've given him a contract. And then this is the surprise. Marcus Harris got a contract. Now, I heard George Bailey did a press conference after this announcement, and he pretty much indicated that Harris is going to England as the spare opener. And if something happens to Warner or Khawaja, it'll probably be Harris going in there. Bailey said that Harris has been the spare batter for a while, that Renshaw and Hanscom were preferred in conditions in India but Harris comes back into that spot. And, Harris plays county cricket. He scored 100 over the weekend. So that's I know you're not a big fan of Harris, are you?
I wouldn't go that far. I sort of feel like with Harris, Hanscom, Bancroft, and Renshaw, that all four of them, they're not out of place at Test cricket, but I don't foresee them coming in and dominating in Test cricket. I think that they're kind of they're on the cusp, on the threshold, so they don't excite me as potential Test players. So if given the choice between those four and Warner, I'd rather stay with Warner almost. They're all averaging 38, 39. They've had some good seasons, some not so good seasons. I just think they're very, very solid players, but not in the top echelon. And that's not meant to be unfair on them. It's just the way that it is. So if Harris comes into the Ashes, what am I expecting he's going to do? I'm expecting he's going to struggle because left-handed opening batters do struggle in England. I mean, if you were to say that he was going to play a decent amount of matches in the series, and you had to guess what he's going to average in, I'd be guessing he's probably going to average in the 20s or the 30s.
Yeah, I do give some stock to the run scoring ability that Harris has developed in the last 2 years. I think, especially that experience in England, playing a lot of innings, I think he's really learnt the art of scoring runs. And I think we still might see quite a bit from him at international level. And I think he still could be a really good Test opener. He's a friend of the show. You and I interviewed him on Cricket Unfiltered a couple of years ago during the pandemic. So I'd love to see him come in there and score a few Test hundreds. So that's the contract list. No other surprises really in that list. Josh Inglis is firmed as the spare wicket keeper. Ashton Agar retained his contract. But all in all, a pretty good contract list. And I guess with that extra few spots, it means they're going to be able to squeeze most of the favourites in there.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point around Harris. Just looking at his recent record, he had that stint in England in 2019, played 7 matches, only averaged 34. Not disgraceful, but not enormous. But then in 2021, he had 8 matches and averaged 55. So that's very, very good. Went back the next year, 9 matches and averaged 43. Not bad. Better than not bad. And then he's just had that one, he's averaging 104 after 1 match so far. So, look, if he can do a bit what Labuschagne did ahead of 2019 when Labuschagne got all those runs for Glamorgan, then I'll be convinced, and I'll be happy for him to be in the side.
George Bailey made some pointed comments about David Warner, and he basically said that Warner really has to earn his spot in the Test side now, and nothing. He said that he's at the mercy of selection like anyone else, which basically is not the same language we've got in the similar situations in the past. Like, they were backing Finch into the 2020 World Cup. Like, wouldn't have mattered. They were like, he's going to play. Whereas I think they've maybe learnt the error of their ways. And, Warner might not make it to the Ashes now. He might not even make it to the World Test Championship final.
Feels like he will make it to the World Test Championship final.
Well, in that conversation, the big talking point was, is it the fact that England have Stuart Broad? And that's the big difference, that obviously Warner is exposed by Broad. So, Warner might play in the World Test Championship final, but simply because Broad plays for England, he's dropped, even if he scores 100.
I think if he got 100, that it would be hard to drop him. But if he didn't get 100, if he just then I think that's probably how they're looking to go, and it will depend on what Harris does, or others, or Bancroft, or whomever does in the lead up to it. But as much as I think that, if Stuart Broad's running into bowl and David Warner's opening up and it's a green morning and an overcast morning, I'll be very pessimistic about how Warner's going to go. I'd feel just as pessimistic about how Marcus Harris is going to go, if I'm being honest. Hey, what about one player that didn't get a contract, and I suppose it wasn't a surprise, but he gets talked up a bit, and he's got a pretty good record, averaging 40-odd with the bat and 29 with the ball, is Aaron Hardy. Do you reckon he was close to getting a contract?
I don't think he was close to getting a contract, but it's a beautiful segue because I wanted to talk about some performances by some Australian players recently. And at the moment, Australia A are in New Zealand playing New Zealand Day with a Duke's ball in preparation for the Ashes, and Aaron Hardy made 100. Aaron Hardy made 115 in the first innings out of 253. So he's a player to watch. Matt Renshaw made 100 in the first match. Spencer John and Matt Renshaw made 100 in the second match as well. I'm just seeing today. So Renshaw back-to-back tons, Hardy a ton, Spencer Johnson 4 wickets. So some good performances. Not surprised Hardy didn't get a contract, but surprised. He's doing well. In New Zealand, I beat Australia in the first game, but it was a pretty generous declaration by the Aussies that allowed New Zealand to win, although they batted well. So that's going on. Also, some Australians over in England. I mentioned Harris scored 100. Sean Abbott took 5 wickets. Quite a bit of action for the Aussies. And I think the Aussies are looking really good for the Ashes.
It's going to be fascinating. I can't wait for the Ashes. It's hard to get my head around all the different formats and everything going on, but I'm really looking forward to it. One other thing, just before I forget, while we're talking kind of administrative things, I really liked the interview that Mike Baird, or the quote from Mike Baird, the new chairman of Cricket Australia, how he sort of said he wanted to take on AFL as the sort of country's premier sport. And I just liked hearing that. I just think that's a good thing. And nothing against AFL, and the two aren't necessarily all that much in competition because they're in different seasons and whatever else. And in many ways, there's synergies between them in terms of the sharing of grounds and whatever else. But I like that level of ambition.
Yes, he was at the Cricket New South Wales Awards dinner, and he said some nice words. He's part of Manly Cricket Club. He seems to really love cricket. So hopefully he does a good job chairing Cricket Australia. John Knox, the head of Cricket New South Wales, was there and was saying all sorts of stuff about how it was unacceptable that New South Wales didn't win any games. Anyway, and then Greg Shippard pushed back a bit in a speech. And then Steve Waugh came up and he was like, the players are trying. So it was a weird atmosphere, very strange. But I don't think saying players losing games, calling it unacceptable is the right language. I think that's the sort of thinking that got Australia into Sandpaper Gate. Like, unacceptable is going out on the piss and getting in trouble. Trying your best and losing a cricket game is not unacceptable.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on how the context. In the sense of, if you say it in the abstract, it's unacceptable for New South Wales, the premier cricketing state, and to go through a season without winning a first-class game. That's true. But if you're sort of saying to the players specifically, then yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. All right. So last bit of cricket news. A bit been happening in Australian cricket, and very exciting news because another friend of the show, Phoebe Litchfield, is on a tear. So, there's no doubt her appearance on Cricket Unfiltered has done wonders for her career, because she's earned a contract. So she's a contracted women's cricketer now, and she's on the Ashes tour. So we'll go through the contracts first. I think, look, all the main things are Phoebe Litchfield got a contract for the first time. Kim Garth, the former Irish international, got a contract. But then it's all the big names that you'd expect. Interestingly, Nicola Carey actually didn't accept the contract. She said she didn't want to go on the Australia A tour, and she wanted to stay in Tasmania and prepare for next season. So said no to a contract. Still wants to play for Australia, but you don't often hear that. And look,
Indeed.
could be opportunities to play in T20 leagues. There's, we spoke about it before in men's cricket. It's just as big a possibility in women's cricket now. But then the Ashes squad was announced, the Australian women's Ashes squad. So Meg Lanning leading the squad, vice-captain Elisa Healy. Then you got Darcy Brown, Ash Gardner, Kim Garth, the Irish international, former Irish international, Grace Harris, Jess Jonathan, Alana King, Phoebe Litchfield, Talia McGrath, Beth Mooney, Elise Perry, Megan Shute, Annabelle Sutherland, and Georgia Wareham. That's a very strong squad.
Certainly is. And the Ashes themselves, there's a 5-day test that kicks them off in Nottingham. So it starts on June the 22nd. Then there are 3 T20s, Birmingham, and then 1 at the Oval, 1 at Lords, and then 3 ODIs, Bristol, Southampton, and Taunton. So it's the multi-series format. And Australia would be very, very long odds-on favourites to win.
Yeah, so that's really exciting news. Well, that's really it for the cricket news, Paul. I've got a can't let it go to wrap this up. Love a good stat. Well, in the last, I think it was a week and a half ago now, we had the highest international T20 run chase ever. The West Indies batted first, made 258, and then South Africa ran it down. Oh, and that was incredible. They scored 259. It was just a phenomenal win by South Africa, and apparently it was echoes of the 434 game that in the dressing room, I think there was a few players in there joking around. Oh, I think the West Indies are 10 short. Well, it turned out they were, because I think South Africa won with an over to spare.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a great game to watch. I watched every ball of that 434 game in 2006. It is a bit funny how you could sort of, it plays into the narrative of South Africa winning the things that don't matter. But they went on and on about that 434 game. But in the midst of that, Australia won the 99, 2003 and 2007 World Cups.
Good reminder.
Good on them. But yeah, it's an incredible score though. For what's that? 500 plus runs in 40 overs.
Yeah, the first ever 500 plus T20 international or any T20 game. So quite phenomenal stuff. Well, Paul, thanks for joining me. We've smashed it out. We'll be back next week for a Super Over. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Betters. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Don't forget to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Leave a review for the show. Thanks, Martin Lawrence. It's Lorcan Tucker, not Lorcan Murphy. But yeah, we'll be back next week. Bye-bye.